So, Mike, what are your feelings on some of today's current events?
Right at this moment of this campfire, coronavirus scare is occurring. And while the numbers of people infected are increasing and the news media is fueling the craze, you have to be careful about the fear of something being bigger than the something. Just like rain. You watch a weatherman and you get in your car, rain is a hazardous event. You're in the woods, it's just a whisper. So the biggest threat I'm tracking is a panic-induced situation. Empty shelves, people fighting over limited supplies, and the only way you're going to beat that is to not join in that wave. The crowd mentality, there's a lot of powerful psychology in being sucked into that mob mentality. It's too easy. So one of the things each person should be doing is taking an assessment. Fear was just the alarm bell, and it may be that the alarm bell's louder than the actual risk. So why don't you start to track it? Compare it to the common cold and deaths per year per 100 people. Do the work of it. Don't listen to talking heads creating statistics that feed their sensationalist stories. We have irresponsible storytellers in our country, in our modern world. We don't have the elders telling stories. We have people who want ratings, who want viewership. The more sensationalist, the better. And then everyone, it seems to me, who watches those storylines, those news cycles, are miserable. They're not happy. And they become part of the problem. They become fodder or fuel for those stories. It becomes it's like you willed it to be. Self-perpetuating? I'm not sure what the words are, but you make these things manifest that you focus on. And if your focus on the world is viruses and death, we all die eventually. How about living? There's a challenge for you. Right? So when I'm tracking it, I feel that fear coming up if I watch the news cycles or listen to the radio. And I do my best to look past it and look at some numbers and see what's really going on. Talk to people who work in the industry, the medical industry, or the people who study viruses and bacteria, people close to that community. Get different opinions about the facts from people who make a living knowing these things. And then look at your own lifestyle, your own landscape. Are you hygienically sound? Are you washing before and after every meal like it was taught to us? Not to me, but in the 1950s, there were instructional videos of little Scott and Susie washing their hands before going to the cafeteria at school. We don't share that anymore. We're packed into dense populations with people living on top of each other in cities. Our food is run through systems that are fragile at best, should there be, worst case scenarios. But it doesn't have to come to that. It could be as simple as basic hygiene. And then, okay, if that's not enough to feed the dark corners of your practical mind, fine. Study up on all of the off-grid camp hygiene strategies. For instance, separate your camp into 3 components. Even if you live in a house, if you don't have plumbing, don't use the toilet. Use a bucket with sawdust or leaves and put a lid on that bucket until you have a way of disposing of it. We use a Humanor thermophilic composting toilet system. We compost the leftovers of people's food into a bin that turns into soil. I keep it in the bins for 3 years to be doubly sure. And I'm not putting it in my garden, but I am putting it around some of the fruit trees and nut-bearing trees. And you can't tell. It looks and smells like dirt. So there's a system that is going to bite you in the butt That sounds gross and uncouth, and I don't know if the zoning will you know what? These are life-sustaining systems, and they're also those systems, if broken down, are going to be the things that get you in the end. Hygiene-related, cholera, losing more fluid than you can take in because of food poisoning, or someone didn't really wipe well before reaching into the bag and putting things in your bowl. You know, like M&Ms and Gorp. So having hygiene protocols in place is important. Have a wash station at your cat trench latrine or whatever you're going to use to process your human waste. If it's short term, you can get away with those cat trenches. If it's going to look like stretching into months or even years, you need a system in place that's going to be solid and sanitary. Water systems. Everyone's caching water by buying it all off the shelves. You ever think of rain barrels, boiling water, getting one of those Katahdin or Pure? There's many brands out there. There's the gravity-fed bags with the filtration at the bottom. Don't get one, right? Redundancy in systems. But do it from a place of you're developing your strength, not reactionary fear. Because if you're focused on a fear-based platform, it's going to be shaky at best, and it's certainly not going to stand the test of unexpected changes or the realizations that nothing ever returns back to normal. The normal is the present, and that the only constant in nature is change. Cultivating that proactive adaptability, having redundancy in systems, fully realizing you may have to abandon those systems to get to a safer place. That plasticity of your mind is going to be one of the more valuable assets in any scenario, because you'll suddenly, whether through a delusion of propagated story from the media or an actual, much lesser chance of this, by the way, pandemic. Yeah, after all, I know we are due for one. But why look forward to it? Do everything in your power to prevent it, not deny it, not deny that there may be something that could sweep the world and wipe out a lot of people. But don't be crippled by the fear of inaction or panic-stricken shopping sprees. Start with a self-assessment and an assessment of your materials and your grounds, and the relationships you have with the people that you're going to be relying on to get by. Make agreements with them. If during times of stress, codes of conduct, where we would meet if, for instance, it wasn't safe to live in our house anymore.